the third team that we're about to talk about here are, of course, our soccer team, the Philadelphia Union. For me personally, I'm somewhere in between, but our next guest is going to give us all the breakdown as well. So please welcome from across the pitch, friend here of Citywide Special, Don Jose Nunez. Jose,
Hey,
what's going on, brother? How you feeling,
not
man?
much. I'm so glad we could make it work. Obviously, I don't do this full time, neither do you. So to find and carve out some time midday can be a little difficult, but I'm so glad we were able to sort it out.
Dude, we're extremely grateful, man, to have your presence here. Jose, I just want to dive right into this, man. So obviously a 2-2 draw against Cincinnati. The Union, however, do blow the lead, so it feels a little bit like a defeat here. But give us your perspective. You were down there in Chester, from my understanding. You were in Chester, right, for the match?
I was, and I think the way that you can summarize it's really just as simple as a tale of two halves, right? Where you
Yeah,
had a very dominant half by Philadelphia, controlling a lot of the play and getting some passes, key passes in, benefiting from a penalty kick. Obviously, Gazdag very very good on the spot.
yeah.
A Brujo Martinez goal that he continues to shoot from afar, and I don't think we're going to be too upset if they continue to go the way that they have been and in the style that they have been. But all in all, again, a tale of two halves, right? You have the second half where Pat Noonan, no stranger to Philadelphia, obviously assistant coach to Jim for a few years, and Chris Albright, again, a mastermind in terms of being a GM, and obviously we've gotten Ernst Tanner bringing on, and Jim mentioned it during the post game press conference. An $8 million player came in at the second half and played $8 million soccer with Bupsenda, I think it's how you say his name. Young guy from he represents Gabon
Yes.
internationally. Played in Qatar.
Still trying to get his name down as well.
Yeah. Came in and honestly changed the game. He came in for again another Union face that we recognize, and that is Sergio Santos. So came in and just completely flipped the game on its head. And, within the first 3 minutes, the Union giving one up, which is, something we've seen before. You don't have to go that far back. It feels like a long time back, but Tijuana on the Leagues Cup, right? Tijuana came back from halftime and just shot one right at us. But I think another aspect of the game that we need to remember is just the officiating. 12 yellow cards in that match, as well as one red card. So referee was getting his work out with his arm, getting the cards out. But all in all, a very frustrating night that should have been a win with all intents and purposes.
For sure, man. Yeah, a lot of bickering, man. It's crazy because like both of these teams have slowly started. Not I wouldn't say rivals, but it's clear on the pitch it gets heated. And obviously the history between the two with Noonan and Albright and all that, it does feel like that for so. Hopefully, we'll see what happens in the playoffs, but definitely it's starting to heat up here. One thing that I'm just noticing, just from talking to you and watching on Saturday, look, Ernst Tanner has knocked it out the park with player selection for this team, right? Last year, one of the biggest strengths that you don't see in this year's team is the depth. When you got Corey Burke coming off the bench, when you got Paxton Aronson, having those guys coming off the bench. Now this year, right, the main all-season acquisitions, Andres Pereira, Joaquin Torres, Damian Lowe. I mean, obviously, Pereira's not even here anymore. Joaquin Torres struggles to even find the pitch. And Lowe, he's hit kind of a wall a little bit as of late here, man. And with the amount of soccer this team has played already this year, my concern is going into the playoffs. A lot of people's concerns is the form going into playoffs right now. So my concern heading in the playoffs is, do we have enough in the tank with what we have right now to make another deep run in the playoffs? And that is where my concern lies there, Jose.
It's going to have to be. The rosters froze as of Friday evening. So There's no additions. There's nothing that can happen. Everything's set and done. And that's just the way it's got to be now. Could there be emergency additions? I'm not sure how that all works out with the MLS. It has all types of funky rules. Obviously, if that was the case, I would think that MLS playoffs 2020 or 2021, whenever that was, the COVID game would have been a lot different. But nonetheless, it's going to have to be. And you hit on something that I've been saying for a little bit, and Dave Miller and Mike Barrera with us and Across the Pitch have talked about this has been a very ineffective transfer one window. We haven't had enough time to really make up our minds on what's going on with Dai Baribo, right? He's come in 20 minutes just this past weekend, and then played 20 minutes with Israel and I think 18 minutes a previous game. So very, very little body of work for us to judge him on. But when you do look at Perea and Torres and Damian Lowe, only one stands out because the other two have been complete, fumbles. Though I would argue that Perea getting a chance at New York City FC and starting just about every single game since the loan maybe is telling about maybe what we just didn't see. Maybe it was a personnel type of situation, right, where personalities didn't mix. I know for the longest time, when asked about it, Jim would tell us that it was about Perea's inability to adapt to the defensive side, right? I think they had mentioned that, or Jim had mentioned that Perea was still getting caught up on the defensive side of the Philadelphia Union. Now, whether that's true or not, that's for you to judge. But to see him get key minutes in a New York City FC team that I wouldn't say is great, but it isn't awful, is really interesting and telling. And also, on a side note, it's so great to see Matt Freese finally start every single after a long year of being on the bench. So it's nice to see that, again, the tendrils of the Philadelphia Union continue to expose themselves across the league.
Yeah, man, it's definitely good to see, and we'll see. I mean, obviously, Ernst really took advantage of the MLS market, and I don't know. I don't know if he kind of scouted it all the way through. I don't know, but it just doesn't feel like clear. This transfer market over the winter last year didn't hit as others have had. And so,
well, one thing to remember, though, JP, is that this was the very first time, at least in my understanding, one of the very few times since Tanner and shortly before him, that the Union have really done a lot of work within the league, right? Because you think about how we usually operate, right? Going to South American countries, going abroad to Europe, and finding just very specific types of players, plucking them out, plugging them into the Union, develop them, rinse, repeat, sell, profit, and continue. And that just did not happen when you look at the three players that we brought. Though you can argue that Damian Lowe we brought home after being a Reading United player for as long as he was, and going out to Egypt, being out in Miami, etc. We finally brought him home. So that one is a little different. But you think about Torres and Perea, it's just really fascinating to see where maybe this is a vote of confidence and in the Tanner way of like, no, we need to get away from this league because if it's not working in other teams, it probably isn't going to work for us. I don't know. It's just something to think about.
I just wonder what it was, though. Like, what was it that it didn't work this time around? Like, I mean, is it the player mentality? Like, I'm just curious at what it's like. Because, dude, Ernst has found gems in Hungary, third division, Germany, Venezuela. And, like, you find players here in the States and it's just weird. I would love to dive deep into that one, but I guess we'll have to wait and see, man. We're out to wait for the 30 for 30.
And we forget about Trent Holden, right? A goalkeeper that was drafted, again, one of the very few, if not almost obsolete use of draft picks in this league, right? The Union, you often see the grades, right? Post-draft grades from folks, Matt Doyle, I think, in the MLS website, or Tom Bogert, I think he does some of them too. And the Union, they just say, it's the Union. They don't do anything in the draft. So for them to pick out this goalkeeper, apparently special, though I don't think that he has played a whole lot for the Philadelphia Union too. I know he had something with his thumb for the longest time, and being Joe Bendick's time. So interesting times for us for sure.
I mean, I'm sure you've seen him in training too. My future for him, I think, is going to be bright, man. Obviously, the first year here, learning under Blake too, and Bendick is a veteran guy, like that. That's always beneficial too. So I think like he's got the right tutelage here. I think he's got the right mindset too. But it's just going to take some time, man. It's not an easy position. It really, really isn't. And these guys last a long freaking time playing as well, man. Cincinnati, playoff time. Would you say that they're the team that would concern you the most out of every team in the East, considering, listen, some of these teams in the East have also had our number too?
I think I'm more afraid. And we played, and let's just be very clear, we played a Cincinnati team without Lucho Acosta, right? And he is a game changer, potentially the MVP for this year. So let's not get that lost in the conversation that was the 2-2 draw. I think if he plays, we absolutely lose that game by 2, maybe. Maybe we put in 2 and we lose by 2 anyways, 4-2. So let's not get that lost in the conversation. But I would say that I'm actually more nervous about playing at Columbus. Columbus has made a lot of additions. You have Wilfred Nancy, who departed a club that was in shambles out in Montreal and has really made his way into Columbus and changed that team overnight, as well as making some great additions over the past really these last couple of months. It really turned that team around. So Columbus scares me quite a bit, though I fear for any team because I just don't see how we get a home field advantage in any way, shape, or form. And I just have very little confidence on the Philadelphia Union going away from home to true away games. You don't count DC as an away game with how well fans show up, but to go to an Atlanta and facing them, or go to a Nashville, Montreal, Columbus, like we were saying, or even on the other side of the table. Hopefully we don't fall that far down, but New England, Orlando, just very difficult away games for me to think that we win one away and one at home with this best of three format.
Yeah, man, a lot of soccer as well. This week is not going to be easy for this team as well, man. I want to talk a little bit about Kai. Obviously, you are the man that did announce that reporting there. It's funny, Jim mentioning again that whole money thing as well. Yeah, Jim's mentioned that a couple times about subs coming off the bench being worth a lot of money.
I've been reading between the lines about that quite a bit, and I actually asked him about it at a press conference. He addressed part of my question, but not all of the question. Where I asked him, it was shortly after him complaining about the field being a little and leading, apologizing to the players for it, and I asked them, Jim, you've called out or asked over the last few weeks about the facilities being what they are. Then you have your comment after Toronto that the Union don't have a player that scares the SHI. Can I swear? I don't want to swear.
Oh, you can.
Okay. Yeah. Scares the shit out of other. He didn't say shit, but like I read it as that scares the shit out of the other.
He said it in his head.
Yeah, for the Union, it's a collective effort. Whereas Toronto, they have the two Italians and then some to really freak out teams. And now you have this comment about an $8 million player doing $8 million things. I think it's very, to me, clear as day that he is being very open about having to change what's going on here. So yeah, it really does feel like he's trying to signal something without signaling out loud. And then you have, everything going on with Kai. It's just
and Jose, it doesn't help as well that you look on the team that you just play in Cincinnati with the same mentality, some of the same teachings that you taught those guys, and they're spending the money the right way. And dude, they're first in the East. So
you have to be so happy. Dude. You have to feel very happy for Chris Albright, right? You have to think about the lack of latitude that he had to work through at one point to get us the stepping stones to then Ernst Tanner coming in. It has to be sort of commended, if not understanding, from the fandom that Chris did all he could with the resources he had, right? Maybe he didn't have the scouting eye that Ernst has in terms of, we talk about these very specific players in very specific nations, lower leagues, etc., that we pluck away and churn out to profit. But Chris Albright, now that he has an open wallet, I can't help but to be happy for the guy, because he's showing that if you invest wisely, you're going to get really good results. $8 million player coming from Qatar, of all places, right? Coming and changing a game in 42 minutes and getting himself, again, in 42 minutes worth of game time into the team of the week for the MLS. So really, really showed his worth.
And that's what we're saying, man. Like, you don't have to go out and spend 15 million, 20 million on a Lorenzo Insigne, like the Bernardeschi type. But yeah, man, spend over 5 mil on that player. That makes that difference. And you'd be crazy to see what happens. So you obviously, you've been behind the reporting. You heard the fans on Saturday. Just from your honest opinion, where do you think this team what do they feel about it? Where do they stand with this whole situation to pay Kai?
To be super candid with you, I received a lot of messages now that I know how to open my DMs to anybody. I received a lot of messages from other people who are reporters across the league, congratulating me for breaking those news and sort of my follow-up on it.
Deserving, yes.
One specific individual almost literally saying, congratulations, you started the Kai Wagner sweepstakes out in public, where I'm sure multiple teams have been sort of planning, in case he doesn't sign, where is he going to go? It's, to me, fascinating to see that. I don't think the team was ready for sort of the blowback, right? To see, and I'm so glad it didn't happen. There was that one post about the young girl with Kai in terms of being one of the fearless 43, right? Having survived her battle with cancer. I'm surprised it didn't happen on that post, but every other post that you would see from the team, it was littered with people saying pay Kai, pay Kai, pay Kai. So I commend the fandom for holding back and realizing, there's bigger things than just players. But I don't think the team was really prepared for everything that came out of it. Maybe I'm wrong, and I don't know. But it's also interesting to see. I wasn't invited and would not have been able to go, but Ernst Tanner taking it upon himself to call in or get together with the big three in terms of the media coverage and sort of having a round table about Kai's situation, not wanting to, as the way I read it, not wanting to set the standard for the position in terms of pay, but also not wanting to disrupt the wage structure that the team has, right? Additionally, being very clear that Kai did not tell the full story. Did mention me by name, but obviously Kai did not tell me the full story, and there was more to it in terms of having some negotiation, and ultimately Kai and Wasserman, who are his agents, not really being willing to negotiate after a couple of attempts. And then finally, the one quote that was really, really interesting to me was, this is a position that doesn't pay top dollar. So maybe he, meaning Kai, has to not be looking over to the other side and think that things are greener. Maybe things are just good enough here. So just a really, really fascinating situation that's unfolding, and this weekend didn't help much. Again, negotiating through us in the media, and in terms of, I don't know if you saw the audio bit I posted, but just Kai saying, I'm not asking for a lot. And frankly, I think that the fandom and the club deserve better by investing in players like me. And I'm paraphrasing, but that's really what it boils down to. So Kai, I think, is done talking about it. I'm intrigued. I'm going to make the trip out to New England to watch him out in Foxborough.
Nice.
And right before the playoffs. So I'm going to ask him one last time while I'm there, going into the playoffs, what his situation is. But for now, I think we just honestly sit down and wait. And I have thoughts onto what the magic number is, but I wonder what it actually is.
Dude, yeah. And obviously money does talk, but I mean, it's an interesting situation. And obviously, for a lot of Union fans, Kai is a legend, and Kai is definitely a legend. We're talking about one of the best defenders, best fullback in Union history. So it is truly interesting. So real quick before we let you go here, we're going to talk about Charlotte more tomorrow, but after Cincinnati, heading into Charlotte, a hectic week, a hectic stretch here of matches. What are you looking for this team to do in Charlotte on Wednesday night?
It's a tough place to play.
We found that out last year.
It's a very difficult place to play out in Charlotte. If you remember last year, they spanked us 4-1, I think.
Daniel Rios.
And the reason I remember that match specifically is because I was building baby furniture before my second child came in with the game in the background.
Did you break the furniture after?
I was just very like, all right, well, I guess this is how it's gonna go, and just continue to build. And Charlotte goal. It's just like, oh my God, all right, let's settle down. But I think, I've always said this to Dave and Mike, but tie away, run at home. That's the way you win championships in most leagues, or you climb, I guess, here in the MLS, you win the Supporter Shield, right? Take care of your home games and tie or sneak away with a win on some games away from home, and you'll easily find yourself at the very, very top, if not very, very close. Though I guess what I really want to see from this team is a little bit of grit, right? Coughing up a 2-goal lead at home, where that typically doesn't happen. And Todd Lewis, credit to him, I think he found out that this is the first time since 2018 that the Union have given up a 2-goal lead to not ultimately win the match. So I guess I just really want some more consistency, right? Seeing them figure it out, fast start, both halves. We're so susceptible to conceding the first 15 minutes, and obviously very susceptible to conceding within the first 5 of the second half. So it'll be really interesting, though. I would argue that this is a year where if things continue to go the way they are, or I guess you could say they need to get back. But with Miami losing this weekend, the possibility of then making the playoffs gets a lot bleaker for them.
Yeah.
But I don't think that this is a year where you want to find yourself as a number 1 Never mind being the two wild card teams, the 8 and 9 facing each other. Because I don't know that you want to face Miami with Messi, Busquets, and Jordi Alba in the play-in game. No. Never mind being Cincinnati and having to find them on a best of 3. So really, really interesting, I guess, pieces to consider where maybe being a number 2 or a number 3 isn't such a bad thing this year.
Dude, the MLS is rapidly changing, man, and you got to keep up with it, man. You got to keep up with these teams, man. Jose, dude, it's truly a pleasure and honor having you back in here, man. We'll definitely try to have you on here more often, man. But, dude, thank you so much again, and you enjoy the rest of your day. We'll talk some more.
Thank you. Have a good night.
You as well, man. Ladies and gentlemen, Jose Nunez. Make sure you guys are following him, and, of course, everyone else across the pitch. Jose's doing a fantastic job reporting like we talked about with the Kai Wagner stuff. But really good insight from Jose, obviously, with the Cincinnati match. And, I mean, yeah, for me personally, like, you know, there's a lot of stuff that you don't usually see. Like Jose mentioned the first time that this team blew a lead after being up 2-0 at halftime and blowing it and not walking away with 3 points. They did walk away with a point, but that's just stuff that we haven't been used to in this iteration of Union Soccer since Ernst and Jim have brought this team to where it is now. But, yeah, I mean, depth. That's really the main thing that does concern me because of the fact that this team last year, they could really boast about that depth. And this year, it's just not there. You see what Abu Pensak being able to come off for Cincinnati. It's a guy who can put a ball away in goal. And that's, you know, right now, obviously Taibo Arribo, he's trying to get in form, trying to get acclimated with this team. But Donovan and Quinn Sullivan weren't able to do that. And you really didn't have anyone else coming off the bench to put away goals. And so that's definitely the bit of a concern. A lot of soccer is being played, and these guys have to dig deeper than before. Can they do that? It's a lot of question marks. And they have to find a way to get in form as we gear towards the end of the season. It's a lot of questions. This team has gone through more adversity than ever before that we've ever witnessed here. And we're going to learn a lot about this team. The East as well is not easy. Cincinnati, obviously, clearly the best team in the MLS, let alone the Eastern Conference. New England, still a good team, even with all their drama. We'll see how much longer they'll be hanging around. Orlando City, still a really solid team under Oscar Pareja. Atlanta, Columbus, good teams behind you. So for the Union, eyes on the prize, and that's the playoffs, and we'll see. And obviously now you get the Kai Wagner stuff. There may have been a little bit of drama in that dressing room. And so on and so forth. So we'll see a lot of uncharacteristic play as well. Backline hasn't played completely well throughout the season. So we'll have to wait and see here.